Hello and welcome back to UI Chat from the Interface, the monthly show talking about everything Ubiquiti and networking. I'm your host Alex, and once again I'm joined by my co-host Evan McCann. Welcome, Evan.
Hey, good to be back.
Yeah, all good. How'd you like my t-shirt this month? I got a very retro Ubiquiti t-shirt that's probably from about 2015, I reckon. So
that is so much cooler than their current merch.
Yeah,
like the one that is just all black with a white
boring.
U.
Yeah.
They should bring that model back.
Yeah, my boss when I was working at the Wisp, he went to Whisperpalooza in 2016, I think, and he brought me back this retro t-shirt, which is quite cool. So
very cool.
I thought I'd wear it for today. So all good.
Well, yeah, we're both on the blue train. I know for a podcast, like an audio primary medium, it's a little bit confusing, but yeah, we're deep in the blue and ready to talk about some Ubiquiti news.
Fantastic. I don't think we got any follow-up from last month. We covered some Safari stuff last month. There isn't really any follow-up at all. But is there anything that we have been up to since we last spoke, or have you been just buried head in the sand with work?
Yeah, pretty much day job is keeping me busy. I've been on kind of an unofficial summer break, so it's been nice. I honestly didn't pay that much attention to Ubiquiti this month until yesterday and today. So that's when I was working on the show notes, and I am fully up to date, kind of, I think.
Very good.
But yeah, I feel like summertime, it's a good time to just kind of, step back from the day-to-day noise that you kind of sometimes see there.
Yeah, definitely. I used to kind of do that when I used to cover Apple a bit more. I used to do a load of news stuff in June for WWDC, and then do like what you're doing, just not do anything until the iPhone event in September. But I don't cover Apple anymore because everyone's doing it. It just doesn't really interest me that much anymore. Sort of the nitty gritty stuff. But we are here to talk Ubiquiti as usual. So yeah, no follow up. Before we get started, it'd be really good if you could review this show. So thanks to everyone who has been listening or watching the UI Chat podcast. If you can, leave us a review in your podcast app of choice, or leave us some feedback in the comments on YouTube. That would really help us out. Fantastic. So the very first bit is with a sort of top level news is there's a new UniFi Cloud API. This was announced via the Ubiquiti community, and this is pretty accessible. Like if you go to unifi.ui.com. There's a bit on the side where we'll get to that bit later as well. But the site manager itself has had quite a revamp recently as well. But there's this new limited UniFi API. We discussed pre-show that we don't fully know all the details, but it doesn't do loads. That's right, isn't it? It's very much it's called a version 0.1, so it's very early.
Yeah, the fact that it's version 0.1, I think that's an indication of how early this is. I didn't really see, like I said, I wasn't paying super close attention to everything this month, but I didn't really see a big announcement post, and it makes sense that they had kind of like a softer launch for this because it's so early. But there is a new subdomain. It's developers.ui.com.
Okay.
Sorry, developer, singular. And that has actually, I think, my favorite feature of this so far, just because I'm not using it or consuming it yet. It's their documentation for it. So if you go to developer.ui.com, they have a really good basis for what I'm assuming they're going to build on in future versions, where it shows exactly what you can get from it. Right now, there's kind of four main methods or four main things that this does, and it's mostly just listing the hosts and the sites and devices that are on the controller. So you can query this rather than through SNMP or going to the web interface and pulling that information out from there. You can query directly and say, all right, how many UniFi devices do I have on this controller? Get statistics and get some more details about that. And the documentation is really well laid out, where it shows you exactly what will be returned to you when you query this. So it seems like a good foundation. I'm excited to see where they go with this, because people have done this kind of unofficially for a while.
Yeah.
I'm familiar with Art of Wi-Fi. They've done a lot with reporting, querying local UniFi controllers to get statistics pulled out. And I know a lot of people rely on Art of Wi-Fi and similar tools. So this is kind of the official version that's very early, but I'm excited to see where they go.
Yeah, we'll put links to everything in the show notes. There's a GitHub resource, I guess you call it, and he tweeted out, well, Art of Wi-Fi tweeted out about what he's going to be doing. But yeah, I can see this being quite useful to a lot of dashboards and things, and potentially some automation in some way. I haven't got very good imagination when it comes to like this sort of stuff, but I'd imagine there's a lot of things you could do with it, and it'll be quite cool to see what else they do. Potentially some control of UniFi in some way, I'm not sure, but that'd be quite good.
Yeah, I think the base idea is pulling information out. Possibly in the future, you would be able to send information back. So right now it's just, what devices are on my controller. Probably one of the low-hanging fruit is be like, how many clients do I have? How much data have they, sent and received? Just, pulling those statistics. That's a very hard word to say, apparently. Pulling those stats out of UniFi. And yeah, I would love to see them be able to push configuration through this. I'm not sure if that's where they want to go with it, but we'll have to see. But yeah, API keys are available on Site Manager, the unifi.ui.com. And right now it says rate limit is set to 100 requests per minute, so you might run into that if you're playing around with it. But early days and exciting stuff ahead, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm sure. Like, the integration for guest Wi-Fi in UniFi has been a bit to get third-party ports to work. It's been a little bit hit or miss. I mean, it does work. There are people who have managed to get it to work correctly, but I'd imagine with an API that would have two-way communication, that would be quite good for a lot of different reasons. So, it'd be quite good.
Yeah, a lot of possibilities with it.
Yeah. Okay, so we got not much hardware. The first one is, I noticed this on the Ubiquiti store when I was poking around the other day to see if there's anything new, because there's always something new that hasn't been announced. But I noticed that most of the EdgeMAX hardware, so the edge switches, the U-Fiber devices, they've all been like a nip and tuck refresh. So this applied to most of their popular models, despite not some of the older ones. Basically, some of the older ones like the Edge Router X isn't part of this refresh. So the ones I noticed that have been refreshed include the Edge Router 6 PoE, the Edge Router X SFP, Infinity, the 8 PoE Edge Switch, the 48 port PoE and 24 PoE Edge Switches, and then the 2 OLTs for UISP, the OLT original one and then the OLT 4. Basically, this is a very modernization. I've put in my article I wrote some picture comparisons. The Edge Router branding's gone. Like, they lost the italic style of the Edge Router logo. It's now a little bit simpler. On the front of the models, like the silvery material has now been sort of a dark grey, and the USP branding has all been pumped over it. And I said in the article that this sort of cements the future of EdgeMAX a little bit, even though they've released in beta EdgeOS 3. And then you put in the show notes as well that it hasn't actually materialized yet. That was about 9 months ago that the first beta of EdgeOS 3 made its appearance. I put in the article, I said that even though Ubiquiti said that UISP won't replace EdgeMAX, you can't help feeling this will happen eventually just because of the underlying technology of EdgeOS. But imagine what will happen is that once UISP router and switch get to their maturity, I reckon they'll probably replace it eventually. But yeah, what did you think about this? Did it make you a bit happy or whatever?
I don't know if I'm happy or not. I do love EdgeMAX. I have, a lot of history with that platform. I'm happy to see the software very, very slowly creep forward. This hardware redesign, it seems like it's still in this weird zombie state to me, where it's half alive, half not. The fact that they did this, like, they went through the trouble, like, someone at Ubiquiti spent time to redesign these hardware products. They worked with the manufacturer to change them. There was effort put in, so it's like a sign of life, which is good to see. But I don't think it really changes the long-term view that EdgeMAX is going away. UISP is the future. It's just in this weird in between where they don't want to commit to getting rid of it. They don't want to commit to updating it. It's a really interesting development. But yeah, I don't know what to think about it besides it's still on life support. I still wouldn't invest, a ton of time or effort into an EdgeMAX network. But yeah, some signs of life are good. I think the software is probably the more interesting piece.
Yeah.
Because EdgeOS 3.0, yeah, it was, I think, originally the first release candidate was, 9 months ago. The most recent release candidate was 3 months ago.
Yep.
So we haven't seen anything, but now we have this hardware. So it's like, is 3.0 closer to being finished? Is this actually a platform we can rely on for years and years? Those questions are kind of still open, but I have my doubts.
Mm. Yeah. Oh, by the way, if you hear a cat in the background, it's Evan's cat. It's not your cat or anything or whatever. Got a special guest this month.
Yeah, she's a little ornery.
Yeah. Yeah, as I said, I also noticed that it wasn't everything that had been refreshed. Like the Edge Router X hadn't been refreshed, and the age of this platform is showing its creakiness, because every time they release firmware for the Edge switches, there's always two versions. There's one that has support for less VLANs, they said due to performance reasons, and there's one that supports more. Like, it's sort of creaking under its own I don't know. There's limitations with it because it is so old now.
Yeah, I forget the exact. It's what MIPS processors, Cavium chipsets, whatever hardware that EdgeOS was built on top of. I mean, that's like nearing a decade old at this point. Yeah. Even the newer products, which I believe are the XP switches, EdgeRouter 4.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, those are what, 2018, 2017 era products.
I think so. Yeah.
And they haven't realistically they haven't moved forward. So no. It's still, I would look strongly at other vendors. I would look strongly at UISP or UniFi rather than EdgeMAX, but it's good that I guess they have some new logos on the hardware now. I don't know what to think about it.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. I didn't expect this at all, but just I do my regular checks at the store to see if there's anything hidden being released. So yeah.
Well, yeah, speaking of your recent checks, I noticed you had a post on the Hostify blog that the GigaBeam was gone. That was news to me.
Yeah. I think we were discussing something about what's the best sort of point to point. I was like, okay, I'll have a quick look at. I'll just remind myself what there is, and I was like, oh, the GigaBeam's gone. So I had a look on third-party stores, like third-party distributors. All of them are out of stock, even in the US and the UK. Ubiquiti's been out of stock for a long time. They're delisted from the store. So, like, do you remember when the USG was coming to being killed off? You could search for it, but it was sort of not there anymore. This is what's happened, and I find it it's weird, but it makes sense when I looked into it. So I thought once I sort of confirm myself, because there's no point in asking Ubiquiti because I won't actually tell you anything. But so I sort of that sort of tells you everything you need to know, that in fact it's on live support, or not really a good option to buy anymore. So I wrote an article on the Hostify blog, sort of looking at, right, okay, if you need a 60 gig point to point or point to multi-point, what's your option instead of the GigaBeam? If you need, the only problem you're going to have now is if you've got a GigaBeam link and one end dies, you've now got to replace the entire thing because you can't buy them anymore. So there is that. So my alternatives were the either LTU for 5 gig or the USB Wave equipment, which makes sense because I think we discussed earlier in the year that USB Wave has now got a multitude of different CPE options, like the Pico, the Nano, the Wave, and they all can be used as point-to-points. So I think that's probably what they're doing. And what's the point in maintaining another code base if they are any different? So I thought, yeah.
Well, yeah, and the AirFiber 60.
Yes, there is that as well.
Because that's my memory of the GigaBeam. It was introduced as the GigaBeam, which kind of seemed like you take a nano beam, that form factor, the really small circular point-to-point link, and just add 60 gigahertz radios to it. And now they have the AirFiber 60 long range, AirFiber 60 XG, AirFiber 60 extreme range, XR.
Yeah.
Those still exist, but the GigaBeams are gone. So yeah, it seems like maybe it's a branding thing where they want to push Wave as, if you want Ubiquiti 60 gigahertz, buy a Wave product or an AirFiber product. But also the GigaBeams were AirFiber. It's a little bit confusing, and I would love to know why it goes away or why it went away, but I don't think we'll ever get that answer.
I think it's just tidying up their development resource. What's weird is the GigaBeams are always referred to as an AirMax device. That they're
Right.
always under the AirMax family. And when I was working at the Wisp, we used a couple of them, and they're pretty good. I've got one for my home internet. Got a GigaBeam Plus. It worked great. So
Right, and especially with AirMax, they have no problem holding on to old devices. They still sell AirMax M, which is pre 802.11ac. I mean, that's a decade plus old. So they still have decade plus old stuff, but the GigaBeam, which was like a nice 60 gigahertz option, cheap, great for short hops that need high bandwidth, and it's just gone. So I don't know what they were thinking.
Yeah, but yeah, as I mentioned, you've now got the option of all the different Wave CPE devices that can be. I don't think they require different firmware. I think that's what LTE requires. LTE's got a different firmware branch for their point-to-point solutions. So
yeah.
And what's quite cool is you can actually use you can use AirFiber 60s as Wave CPEs as well. I think one of the models, it says it's Wave compatible. So if you had a customer who's quite far away, I guess you could use a AirFiber as their CPE, which would be quite cool. So
yeah, and maybe that was it. Maybe they couldn't get GigaBeams to work with Wave, and or because of the underlying components, they're just kind of getting rid of that and kind of developing
sense,
Wave and AirFiber 60s in the future.
Yeah. So some different developments there. The next product, this one was announced. Well, this was shown off at UWC. This is the G5 PTZ or PTZ. It was this sold out really quickly in every market they sell it in. It's $299, which is exceptionally cheap for a PTZ camera. Honestly, I've watched a couple of reviews of it already. I think Cody did a review. Really good review as usual from Cody, but it looks really good, and it's so much cheaper than the G4 PTZ Industrial, as it's called now. And I remember seeing it in person. It is quite small, which is quite nice because the other one is huge. So I think this looks really good.
Yeah, and PTZ is pan, tilt, zoom, right? So this is one of the type of cameras that you can control. I mean, it's way less resolution, way less zoom, way less IR night vision distance. But for a lot of people, I think they look at $1,800 camera or whatever it is in the EU. And just go,
about the same.
No. But a $300 camera, especially with all the different mount options and all that, I think it's a great value, and that's probably why it sold out so quickly.
Well, this one's awesome because it's got a built-in microphone, which the other one didn't have. It's got a built-in spotlight, which is a trend now. They seem to be fitting spotlights to different cameras. And it has a multitude of mounting options. If you look on the store, you can mount the entire camera inside the ceiling and just have the little ball mount thing, like to move around like a little R2D2 type of thing. So there's again, like with their new cameras they launched, I think late last year or early this year, there's a multitude of different options in terms of mounting, which is really good.
Yeah, they should have called it the G5 R2D2.
That would have been quite cool, wouldn't it? So yeah, unfortunately that's sold out in every market. So once it's out, I'll try and get one because that looks so cool. I believe that there's one of the features the G4 has. I think it's person. Oh no, it's not person tracking. It's patrol mode. I don't think it can do that, which is the one where you give it 3 or 4 different locations to sort of go between. It can't do that yet. I don't know if it is coming anytime soon. So
yeah, I mean that sounds like a software thing. Hopefully that does come.
Yeah.
But yeah, a sweet little camera.
Yeah, lots of cool features. The Cloud Gateway Max. This one was released a few weeks ago, and this looks really interesting. It's like a hybrid of a UniFi Dream Router and a UDM, really. So it's got a lot of features. It's interestingly without the hard drive. I think it's the same price as the UXG Max, I believe. So it's well. I guess that makes the UXG. I don't know. Makes one of them quite well priced, but it's got a lot of features on it. It looks really, really impressive. It's like a little baby UDM with camera features, really. So
yeah, and I think what you just said kind of highlights my main impressions of the Cloud Gateway Max. It's like there are so many overlapping options now. Some old, some new. The terms, even like Max and Ultra, they mean different things depending on which product you're talking about. So the Cloud Gateway Ultra, which this shares a lot of similarities with. It's, I think, basically the same enclosure, give or take a slot for the SSD. But it's the same size as the Cloud Gateway Ultra. It just changes from... the Cloud Gateway Ultra only has 2.5 gig ports for the WAN, which you can't realistically use due to some nerdy details that don't really matter. But the Cloud Gateway Ultra is basically a 1 gig box. There's 1 WAN port, 4 LAN ports. It only runs UniFi Network. The Cloud Gateway Max adds the UniFi Protect application, so it can act as a NVR for a couple, UniFi cameras. But it also includes 2.5 gig on all of its ports. It can do 1.5 gigabits per second IPS routing, just like the UXG Max. So it's like the Cloud Gateway version of the UXG Max. It's like the upgraded Cloud Gateway Ultra. It's like this. There's so many fine lines in this product lineup now that it gets very confusing to talk about. But it's a nice option. I mean, with no storage, it is $199, so it makes the pretty old now Cloud Key Gen 2 Plus a little silly. But if you want to get storage like the Cloud Gateway 2, oh man, even I'm mixing up the terms now. It gets so hard to talk about. The Cloud Key Gen 2 Plus was for a long time hey, I want to have a UniFi controller, have a separate gateway, either Ubiquiti or a third party. This is probably going to replace a lot of people that are looking for that, because, for around the same price, once you start adding storage, it gets pretty pricey. If you get 2 terabytes, it's $479 US. So it can get pretty expensive with a lot of storage, but it makes sense as kind of the new basis for multi-gig networks that are interested in Protect, if that's a fine enough distinction between the 7 other options you have.
Yeah, it is pretty complicated now. What's quite nice is that storage isn't proprietary. It looks to be a very standard NVMe caddy, so you could in theory use a cheaper drive. I'm not sure what spec of drive they give you. I mean, because
all they really say is NVMe. So I'd assume if you buy a standard, it has to be probably keyed the right way and the right length, because that's usually what matters for SSDs. It's interesting you can buy it without storage and potentially put in your own 2 terabyte drive. Maybe that would be a little bit cheaper in the end, but I'm not sure exactly what the details are, because right now the only one that's available is the 512 gig model. The 1 terabyte, 2 terabyte, and no storage. Those 3 models are coming soon. I think sometime in August.
Right. Yeah. Definitely. I think it was a serve a good need. Like it says 30 UniFi devices and 300 clients, 1.5 gig routing with IDS and IPS turned on, and it also does, like the UXG Max, it does have multi-WAN load balancing. Yeah, you're definitely right. It is a bit confusing now. I mean, how you're going to come up with all the appropriate words to recommend which one to get is going to be interesting. But I don't know.
Yeah, it's a little bit of like model exhaustion, where it's like, okay, there's 8 different choices. I have to ask you 7 questions to know which one to recommend. If you strip all of that away, all the branding away, I mean, I still think it's a great product for what it is. It makes the Cloud Gateway Ultra. It's nice that the Cloud Gateway Ultra is so cheap, because the Cloud Gateway Ultra is a much better product for a bit extra money. So if you're looking to get beyond gigabit, obviously look at the Max. If you're interested in UniFi Protect, look at the Max. Otherwise, I think the Ultra is still there for a really great value. Yeah.
No, definitely. It's really good, and I'm still happy they're doing the UXG products, because they are pretty useful for a lot of things. So
yeah,
all good. That's pretty much it for the hardware. There isn't much this month. I think Ubiquiti's taking the summer off as well. So we now got some software to dig into. So we do have UniFi OS 4.0.6 went GA. I updated my UDMSC the other day, and we've got support for. It says, well, you also got 4.0.6 for the UXG products, which looks like it catches up with the UDM line. Is that pretty much what you thought as well?
Yeah, I think 4.0.6 was in early access when we talked last month. So this went GA early July. And then, about 2 weeks later, the UXG products got it. But this, like we talked about last time, it's VLAN Magic, SNMP, IPv6 for the local portal. You can rotate the screen on the Cloud Gateway Ultra, which...
Okay.
And then, a bunch of little bug fixes. So this was just kind of delivering on the EA that we knew about.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, probably the more exciting piece, which was kind of around the same time, was the new UniFi Network application. So we talked, I forget if it was a month or 2 months ago, but it was 8.2 was released. And now this is 8.3. So 8.3.32 finally went GA. The big thing for this release is custom NAT. So this was something they talked about for a while that they were promising in future builds. But yes, so 8.3.32 gives us custom source destination and then also the normal option of masquerade NAT. This is per network, and it does include, or it has the ability to support multiple public IPs. So this is something that UniFi has lacked for a long time and used to be a reason to go to EdgeMAX or UISP products.
Yes.
Now that UniFi has it, it's one less thing to go to EdgeMAX for.
Yeah, definitely. And do you... So when my understanding of turning off NAT is to route like a /29 to your local network. But do you think that would have ramifications if you did that and you lost an internal network? But so if you don't have UDM, obviously the UDM needs to manage internal devices. If you turned off NAT, surely you wouldn't be able to manage those devices anymore. Am I thinking about it the wrong way?
Well, yeah, this gets a little bit complicated because if you're UISP and EdgeMAX, those are more provider side. So if you're a WISP, if you're an internet provider or even like an MSP that's trying to, handle a bunch of networks and you have multiple public IP addresses and you need to assign them to your customers, that's not quite handled by this, from my understanding. This is more, exactly. Like you have a /29 block. You have 5 public IPs to work with, and you want to have this network or this device, like say, I'm trying to think of a realistic example. Like you have a on-premise server that needs to be reachable on the public internet, and you want your guests to go to a different public IP address than that. So like if you have like, I don't know, an email server hosted on your network and you want a public IP dedicated to that, that would be a custom source NAT rule where you say this internal IP goes to this public address. It's reachable for everyone on the internet. If you join my guest network, you're not using that IP. That's what masquerade is, where everything just ends up going to the single public IP on your WAN provider there. Yeah. So this gives a lot more flexibility. I mean, there's still, once you get into the provider side networks, this kind of is a little bit limiting where I haven't played with it too much, but from my understanding, it's limited to UniFi Network. So if you have a UniFi VLAN, you want to NAT it to this public IP, this works great. Once you start distributing public IPs to your customers and being on that provider side of networking, that's where you'd probably want to graduate from UniFi to UISP or another vendor.
Yeah, it just seemed... I haven't got massive amount of understanding of the NAT stuff, really. So it's just more of understanding why they added it to UniFi. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for me in my day job, we have a block of public IPs. We have an on-premise Windows Exchange server that needs to be reachable for people on the internet. So we NAT that public Exchange server to its own IP that's dedicated just to it. And then if you join our network and try to reach the internet, you're not using that public IP. So once you start moving beyond a single public IP address, UniFi kind of fell on its face before. This gives us some tools to leverage multiple public IPs, IPv4 or IPv6, and just say, this network uses that one. If you're coming into my network, this is how they would come in. There's some basic tooling there. So good stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense. I had a quick poke around 8.2 the other day. That's all good. So that is in 8th
8.3.3.
Sorry, 8.3. Yes, well, we already moved on quite quickly. So 8.3. Yeah.
8.3.
There is also domain whitelisting for ad blocking, which I have never tried ad blocking on UniFi. It just seems to mess around with YouTube, to be honest. So it seems to mess up the playback on YouTube. So, and they've also renamed. Well, they've renamed suspicious activity to intrusion prevention. I thought it was called intrusion prevention. Have they flip flopped the naming?
We've gone full circle because this was under the covers. It's still Suricata. Suricata is an open source tool for intrusion prevention detection. They named it suspicious activity, I think, without much of an announcement, and now it's back to intrusion prevention. But this is all like if you're hosting something on your UniFi network and you're trying to detect malicious traffic coming to that public resource, that's the feature. They just keep renaming it. Yeah,
that feature does work well. I'm quite happy I've got it on UniFi because it's sort of a peace of mind thing, really. It's quite nice. Okay, all good. There is also a security advisory bulletin. I guess they're called a CVE sometimes. And this was only affecting the UniFi U6 Plus. And it said it could cause an incorrect VLAN traffic forwarded to APs meshed to the UniFi Plus access point. So, I guess VLANs that weren't tagged upstream were being sent.
Yeah, that is literally all the details we have.
Right.
So the moral of the story is if you have a UniFi 6 Plus, update to version 6.6.74 if you haven't already. It seems like a pretty minor thing, but I just noticed that, and I still love that they do these things, even though it's a pretty minor issue on one specific product. I just like the fact that they're notifying us and saying, hey, update to this to fix this issue.
Yeah, definitely. So that was fixed in 6.6.74. I wonder if that's also fixed in the U6 Plus long range, because that device never made it out of EA. So I'm wondering if that's still also affected. But
yes. So okay. 6.6.74 is specifically for those two products.
Oh, okay.
The U6 LR Plus or Plus LR or whatever you want to say it.
Whichever, yeah.
I think it only was EA, and yes, it is covered by this security or this software update, but it's like a product we don't talk about.
Yeah. There's also some nice improvements to the site manager. This is the software updates for a website, basically, as you called it before. So this is 3.42.6, and the Vantage mode for we've got Vantage mode for Protect that now supports up to 5 NVRs. So again, I think we discussed this last episode. You can pair together 5 NVRs wherever they are. They could be in Australia, they could be in America, they could be anywhere, and they'll be in one GUI, which is lovely. So really nice improvement. And then there is also Site Manager 3.44.1, and this added quite a lot of stuff. This added an ISP viewer. So that for now, this only supports cloud gateways, so UXGs on a Hostify or a Cloud Key. I don't think they're supported. But so any UDMs or anything, they basically have like a nice graph. I'll put some pictures on screen if you're watching this on YouTube, but they have a nice graph giving you latency information per ISP. You can see where the max latency was, I think the max traffic as well. So it's got some nice stats in there. And then you can, if you're MSP and managing like 1,000 UDMs, you can go ahead and blame whichever ISP is the worst. So
yeah, and I think the way these features are trickling down is a little bit interesting, because it's very clear that cloud gateways are the first to get everything. So if you have a UDM Pro, UDM SE, UDM, any of those cloud gateways, you get features first. Then they trickle down to the gateways like the UXGs, and Site Manager is also in that, where maybe a few weeks later you'll start seeing those features in Site Manager that you'll see in your cloud gateway.
Yeah, definitely. Now, we mentioned confusing naming earlier. This is probably one of those. So this is a minor update for the EdgeSwitch XPs. These are the artists formerly known as the Tough Switch, which I was helping a friend out of mine the other day. We found a Tough Switch on his network, so we managed to update it. It was running like version 1.3.
Wow.
Yes, these are called EdgeSwitch XPs, but there is also an EdgeSwitch XP, like 10 XP. But yeah, these are the Tough Switch 5, 8, and 16 devices, and these are so old, the hardware, and that's awesome that they're getting updates still. So these are security updates, connection updates for UISP. The GUI is also now updated. Some various fixes. I think it got a new style GUI a little while back. But yeah, it's great that these ancient devices are having some sort of support still. So.
Well, yeah, and the regular Edge switches, the non-XP, non-tough, whatever you want to call them, they're just normal Edge switches. They got 1.10.1, which was quickly pulled. The only details they said were there was an issue with configurations applying properly in some situations.
Oh, yeah.
Which is the vaguest thing I've ever heard. But whatever that issue was, it was fixed in 1.10.2, which is now currently in EA, and that fixes that issue there. So, but yeah, this kind of keeps the zombie status alive for these Edge switches, where they get the new local web interface, they get some security fixes, and that is literally about it. Pretty
much. And then in the firmware notes, they noted this feature I was on about earlier, the EdgeSwitch Lite version, which limits your VLANs down from just over 4,000 to 255. It says reduces the memory consumption. So if you don't have more than 255 VLANs, don't use the other version, basically. So.
Yeah, and I remember that just reminded me, we had EdgeSwitch S16s up on our tower, and we were running into an issue with, I think it was PoE or like the temperature sensor.
Oh.
We switched over to the Lite version because we didn't need more than 256 VLANs, and that solved our issue. So I think while these devices are in their weird zombie maintenance state, it's worth considering the Lite just for more stability if that's the most important thing to you. Just putting that out there.
Did you ever get affected by, on those S16s, the EdgePoints, there was a firmware bug maybe in 2019 or 2020 that you updated the firmware and the whole thing just died? Oh, okay.
Yes. Which is incredibly annoying and incredibly disappointing, because a lot of times these devices are made to be a couple hundred feet off the ground on a tower. So it's like, oh, we need to hire a climber to go up there to fix this or to replace it, or I need to get my harness on and climb up this tower. I really want to love the EdgePoint and those devices, but I think Ubiquiti's kind of lost some trust there, maybe a little bit.
Yeah, I remember we bought our first ones a while back, and I got two out on the desk, plugged one in, and it powered up, and then there was a fizz, and it just died. So I had to RMA it straight away. What's more annoying about getting people to this is sort of some Wisp reminiscing now. The thing that we ran into a lot was that we rented tower space, so we had to actually apply for access, but they required 24 hours notice. So you think about that with an outage, it's just a headache. So
right. Well, and we had to have like wind test studies done on the hardware that was up there. You need like local approvals to have a tower climber out.
Yep.
It gets very tricky. So you really, really, really want these devices to be reliable.
Yep.
And I mean, the fact that they released a software update and then pulled it and replaced, it doesn't inspire confidence.
I can't see the EdgePoint coming back. I think instead, as we've seen, we've got the UISP boxes now. I think that's what they're going for. They had that weird drawstring thing to go over the cable. It just seems a bit odd. So I think a box is a bit. It's a lovely idea, and they did work super well. But yeah, the idea of them anyway. So yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, for those look at the UISP box and box Plus. Pro, whatever. Yeah, the larger one. Those are the modern alternative there.
Yeah, and there is also in the UniFi world the UniFi Flex utility box thingy, so that works really well as well. I added this as you were talking earlier. I remembered there was a Protect update today or yesterday. The UniFi Protect 4131 was announced 2 days ago, actually. My week slipped out my fingers. This added a new alarm manager. So UniFi cameras, I think this is what it is relating to. UniFi cameras can pick up on alarms. I think that's what it means. And you can have triggers and custom notifications for that. Unless Ubiquiti have some unreleased alarm devices that haven't been announced yet. So I think that's what it means.
This just hit EA 2 days ago, so
yeah.
I think it does point to some new hardware coming for that, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't say anything other than that. The awesome feature was the archive footage feature that exports to Google Drive and OneDrive now extends to SMB servers or NAS devices. That means Synology or any other NAS device you've got. And yeah, your face said it all, the UniFi NAS device as well. Probably when it comes.
maybe Ubiquiti will have some hardware for that too.
Yeah, pretty cool. Some very nice features there. I saw someone in the comments on UP Sense firmware updates was requesting the ability to lock a UP Sense to a specific AP. And that's that little sensor that connects via Bluetooth to certain APs, not the U7 ones now. And gives you temperature updates and stuff. So I'd imagine if you had quite a few APs, they were just bouncing around Bluetooth APs, so you can now specify which one they lock to. And there's a few other quality of life improvements, like notifications improvements and thumbnails and different things there. So all good. Pretty much it, I think. That's been probably the quietest month ever for Ubiquiti news.
Well, hey, a couple pieces of hardware, a couple big software updates.
Yeah.
New subdomain. We have an API now for UniFi. I mean, it was a quieter month. I think a lot of these things seem small, but I think we might look back and go, oh, wow, the UniFi API, that's a big deal now. So
yeah.
Still, it seems like they were very clear about their path for this year, where it's enterprise. We're building towards, I don't know if the end of the year they'll be done with that path, but it's just another month marching towards that goal of making UniFi more enterprise grade, whatever you want to consider that to be.
Yeah, definitely. So Chris Sherwood, he released a video about 4 p.m. my time, so about 5 hours ago, looking at the new Starlink Mini. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at this. The video is, as usual, top-notch quality from Chris. Really, really good, enjoyable to watch. But the Starlink Mini isn't on sale in the UK yet, but this is a additional device that SpaceX has in its lineup, which is the same size as an A4 piece of paper. And you can carry it in your backpack. It has a multitude of different power options, USB-C coming soon, 48-volt DC power, you can power it off an AC power adapter, all sorts of stuff in there. And he was getting speeds of 150 meg plus, just literally set up in his back garden. So a great little device if you're camping and maybe in a camper van or RV or anything. So I think that's really good.
Yeah, it's awesome. I haven't seen the video yet. I'll definitely check that out. I saw a few things about the Starlink Mini, that device in general. It seems very, very nice for what it is. And exactly for people traveling, if you're on a boat, RV, whatever, or even at home, I guess it could be applied there. But great little device there. Yeah,
he tested it. So $150 a month gets you unlimited data, and that gets you roaming support. And he tested it at 80 miles an hour while driving, and it was still working. So, and also $50 a month for 50 gigs. Again, that's roaming, everything. And you just imagine, you just plug all the router device, but all the Wi-Fi bits are integrated in the antenna itself. So there's no extra router. You just plug it into one cable, and you're away basically. So it's fantastic. And he mentioned in the video that it was only in 2021 that the first gen came out, the Circle Dish, and he was saying, look how far it's come in the 3 years since. So very, very, very impressive. Yeah. And I mean, I'll only speak to the American ISP market, but sadly those prices you mentioned for, I forget, was it 50 megabits per second for $50 a month? Or no, it's 150 megabits. That's I think that's the top of its range, because it obviously hasn't got much gain. It's $150 for unlimited data, but there's no cap on speeds.
Oh, okay.
It's whatever it can get. Yeah.
There's a lot of corners of America and a lot of corners of the world, and if you're in the middle of the ocean or whatever, where that is actually a great option. So always good to see competition there, and I'm glad to see Starlink, despite Elon's weirdness. I'm happy to see Starlink and all the people behind that technically are delivering a lot of really cool stuff.
Yeah. It supports pausing the plan. So I've got a Starlink behind me in a box that I used last year. I've had it paused since last year, July, because I haven't used it. But you can pause the plan on this one. It's got an RJ45 port on the base. You can plug it into a UniFi Network, for example, and use it in bridge mode. That's super cool. Very quick setup. So awesome. Yeah, links to Chris's videos will be in the show notes as well. Is there anything else that we've been working on that you want to let everyone know about yourself, or you're having the summer off, so probably not?
Yeah, we're on summer break, I thought. I mean, you've been doing a lot. I saw a couple posts on the Hostify blog. That's where I noticed that the GigaBeam was out. And your car channel, almost 1,000 subs, huh?
Yeah, I started doing car reviews on the separate channel. Well, I had everything on the same channel to start with, which turned out to be a bit stupid, so I got split it out. But yeah, I've been doing car reviews since June last year, and it's, I think, 40 away from 1,000, which is fantastic. I saw you liked one of my posts on Twitter, I think about the new Golf, I think.
Yes.
I think that's going to come to the US, I'm not sure. Looks pretty cool.
Yes, that is near and dear to my heart, because I am a Volkswagen Golf owner. But yeah, awesome to see that channel growing.
Thank you. Yeah.
Do you have anything that you're working on for that, or I mean, do you have anything to do to celebrate 1,000 subs? I mean, it feels like a big milestone.
I don't know. Not too sure, but I recorded the. So if people who listen to this don't know and are interested, there's an EV podcast I do with my friend Jim. He's from England, but we talk about cars we've tested because he's a car reviewer as well. We've got different things on there. So if you're interested in EVs, charging status, there'll be a link in the show notes as well. But no, I've nothing planned for the 1,000 subs happening of my channel, unfortunately. What's quite interesting actually is at the moment it's 50 years of the Golf, and a bunch of journalists, not including me, are actually driving from the UK to Wolfsburg, the VW factory right now, in one of every single generation of the Volkswagen Golf. So that's very cool.
Awesome.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah, I mean, this is so off topic, but if I can just say briefly, the fact that Volkswagen doesn't bring anything, it seems like all they bring to the US market now is SUVs.
Yep.
They got rid of the regular Golf. They still have the GTI. They still have the Golf R, but they're very limited. Manual transmissions are going away. Like, for me as a Golf with a manual transmission fan, it's a little bit sad. But yes, I would love to see any of those smaller cars make their way to the US, even though I'm sure they'll sell about 3 of them. Hopefully one of them will be to me, maybe.
Yeah, I had a quick poke around the US website, the VW US website the other day, and there's a lot of big stuff. I mean, you guys don't even get the ID3 or the ID5, but you'll get the ID7, which I've driven, and that is very cool. So yeah, but that's a very big car. So
yes, they apparently Americans like large vehicles. That is sadly the reality. But
yeah, what generation of Golf do you have?
I have a Mark 7.
Oh, very nice. Okay, yeah, they're still very good. The Mark 8 lost all of its buttons, which was annoying. So yeah.
Yes, although they're slowly fixing that, but give it a couple of years maybe.
Yeah. Okay, so everyone is tuned out now.
Yes, no one cares about our thoughts on cars, but
no.
If you do, subscribe to his YouTube channel there.
Thank you. So, as always, you can find this podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and more. For a full description of this show, visit the episode link in the show notes. If anyone has any Ubiquiti-related questions, please email them to info@theinterface.uk, and we'll try to go through those questions in a future episode. Thanks for listening to this episode of the UI Chat podcast. If you like what we do, follow this show on all the podcast platforms, and you can watch our gorgeous faces on YouTube. Give us a rating. It really helps other people find this show. Thank you so much, Evan.
Thank you. See you.